10 years ago, I had just turned 40, marriage ending, business failing, health and fitness suboptimal. My expectation was that things would get worse because I felt too old to fix any of it. I would spend the rest of my life sad and alone doing whatever job I could find that would suit a middle-aged failure with no passion left for anything other than burgers. And while I worked at McDonald's, my 4 kids would just go feral and probably all end up arrested or worse. Yet here I am, just turned 50, and all is well. In recent years, I've travelled the world, married someone amazing, and got myself a job with not a nugget in sight. So in this video, 5 things that I tweaked to go from crashing and burning at 40 to never better at 50. Oh, and only one of my kids ever got arrested. Stole a rowing boat, ended up handcuffed, face down in the mud of a riverbank. It was like a movie reboot of Wind in the Willows, directed by Tarantino. But hey, I'm not flipping burgers, so there's that. 2012, and I read a book on how to save your failing relationship by becoming an alpha male type thing. It was written by the sort of person that today would be dishing out advice on TikTok to vulnerable young men on how to seduce women and trade cryptocurrency.
If you want to make money and escape slavery, we will teach you.
But there was a line in it about getting in shape, which was basically this: if you get in shape and it helps you win back the woman you are losing, that is good. And if it doesn't work, good, because you're now single, you better be in shape. And it just clicked with me that that just applied to so much. Whatever was going to happen to me, my relationship, my career, my health, if I improved myself in whatever ways I could, I would be better placed at any point in the future. And that is hard. It is hard to go to the gym when you're thinking, what is the point? Because I'm going to go home to someone that will just be disappointed I didn't drop a barbell on my head. It is hard to focus on doing a good job for your customers or your clients or your boss when you're thinking, I'm going to be unemployed in 6 months. But I did my best and it worked out in all sorts of ways. My relationship did finish, but being in shape helped me be confident enough to establish a new one. Nobody was swiping right on that. Conversely, my business didn't fall apart, but because I'd carried on working hard at it, I was able to get things back to where they had been quicker than I would have done otherwise. And I try to maintain that attitude today. Whatever is going wrong, I keep trying to address any shortfalls, because whatever is heading your way, being better when it arrives will be better. 10 years ago, I was highly stressed about finances, my kids' education being disrupted by everything that was going on, having to learn how to use Tinder. And then I realized none of those were actually things that should have been impacting on me as permanent stresses in the way they were. And I realized it because I encountered actual stress. Most obviously, when I took a completely out of character trip to motorcycle solo around Africa, not having ridden a motorcycle in about 15 years. On the flight to Cape Town, and the first night there in a hotel before picking up the bike the next day, I was still stressed about my mortgage and debts and taxes. And was it the clutch on the left or the right hand side? At the end of the first day of riding though, I stressed about nothing and slept like a baby for the first time in years. And the reason for that was that I would spend the daytime experiencing actual stress. Was I going to fall off and spend 3 days waiting for someone to come past and find me? Was I going to get attacked by a pack of wild baboons if I stopped too long to try and film them? Could I fix the puncher before I ran out of water or cooked in the sun or got attacked by the baboons? Baboons are scary. And the great thing about all those situations is the normal stress response that's developed over thousands of years is perfect at dealing with them. A problem occurs, saber-toothed tiger, flat tire, you get stressed, a flood of adrenaline sharpens your responses, focuses your mind, you deal with the issue at hand, and if alive afterwards, the stress can dissipate because there's nothing left to be stressed about. My problem was that, like many people, I'd been shielded from real stress situations, so found it all too easy to assume that situations not deserving of a 24/7 adrenaline rush did need just that. What could be worse than a red letter from the bank? So once I found myself being able to compare how I really felt about an overdue credit card bill with how I felt about a potential baboon attack, it just occurred to me that to get overly stressed about the bill wasn't productive. I can't fight or flight from the bill. I just need to figure out how to deal with it and implement that solution. And even in the worst case, it's not eating my face off and running off with my GoPro. I spent a lot of time when things were going bad worrying about who was going to stand by me, support me, be there for me. which of my children, who of my family and friends, any of my work colleagues, and it slowly dawned on me that not a single one of them was guaranteed to be there for me long term, because I had no idea what life had in store for them. Someone can tell me they've got my back, but if a bus drives into their back, they're no use to me. And so instead of running around trying to aggressively maintain relationships and friendships and panic if any of them appeared to be weakening, I just worked on the basis that I would always be around as long as I'm around. So I just really worry about me as a priority, which sounds a bit selfish because it's a bit selfish. And that's not a bad thing. If you improve your own situation, improve yourself, that can't help but be a benefit to those around you, whether that's because they rely on you, like your children might, and now they get to rely on someone better, or whether because they simply want to see you better, as your friends and family should. Basically, being selfish isn't a bad thing. In fact, ironically, not being selfish often ends up being worse for everybody. Here's a couple of examples that I've often used here. When my kids were young, they played basketball at a time when I was trying to no longer be obese. So I would drop them at their games and then go for a run. I'd come back, collect them, take them home. Not every time, occasionally I'd watch them play, but more often I'd exercise while they were playing. And people would say to me, I should be doing what the other parents were doing, which was religiously watching every single game. And now, more than 10 years on, I can look back very confident I did the right thing. My kids didn't miss me not seeing every game because they had no expectation I would watch every game. They were also crazy competitive and highly focused. So they were paying far more attention to who their opponents were going to be than whether or not I was stood on the sidelines stuffing myself with a hot dog. And I didn't miss seeing every game because, to be honest, they're 11 years old. LeBron's not running up and down the court. There's not even any cheerleaders. But whatever negative implications there were of me skipping those games, they were far outweighed by the situation that exists today, where I am regularly able to work out with and train with my kids and hopefully inspire them to keep doing so. Had I stayed on the path that I was on, I'm not sure what the relationship between us would consist of today, beyond them just buying me clothes from companies designed specifically for men with dad bods every Christmas. And the other example, that trip I took to Africa. I went solo. Jen stayed at home. Trip of a lifetime. She didn't come with me. But when the trip was over, she got back a better person than she waved goodbye to at the airport. And within a couple of years, I went back to Africa. She came with me, which was perfect. Because as the saying goes, you don't need to outrun a baboon, just a person with you. This one gets easier and easier to grasp the older I get. At 50, I am now very aware life is brutally short. And it's not so much my old age that highlights that to me, it's everything around me being given a different perspective by the passing of time. As an example, I watched Lethal Weapon recently for Christmas. It opens with Roger Murtaugh celebrating his 50th birthday.
Happy birthday to you!
That's right, the start of Lethal Weapon, Murtaugh, who Riggs refers to as an old man throughout the film, is a couple of weeks younger than I am today. Even if I don't feel it myself, my place in the timeline of cultural relevance tells me I am literally too old for this shit. The difference between now, 50 and 40, is that fact that life is short, it acts like a boost of exciting urgency to everything I want to get done. Whereas 10 years ago, I saw it as a brick wall preventing me from having time to do anything else. So I simply approach the same reality, that the clock is ticking, differently now, because the approach now is I don't have time to waste, and that's no bad thing. If I suffer from a period of terrible eating, something I've documented here many times, I might have spent weeks in the past continuing to eat badly and not train because I was so miserable about what had taken place. Now, I don't have spare weeks to do that. I'll happily write off whatever happened the day before as water under the bridge, because today needs to get back on track, because today's are a valuable resource that is running out. So negative things, I just don't let them drag on. And positive things, I spend much less time deliberating over whether or not to try something new or have a go at something I'm not too sure about. It's a bit of a cliche to say that you are more likely to regret the things you didn't do than the things you did. But once you're old enough to have a long list of things you didn't do, you get very aware the cliche is spot on. And so over the last 10 years, I have grabbed opportunities, thrown myself into situations that seemed like 1,000,000 to 1 long shots, and just taken gambles in ways I would never have done in the previous 40 years. That's not to say it always goes to plan. For every, hey, do you want to go for a coffee long shot that turns into marrying someone hot and too young, there is a drunk late night, they'll probably never accept this bid anyway, eBay episode that ends up with me having a 1984 GPZ 900R parked in my office like an old relic with no purpose. But on average, the cliche stands up. There is very little I've done in the last few years that when I look back on it, I'd want to change in any way. Very little, not nothing. Lastly, I almost didn't make this video because I really care so little about turning 50. When I did, I had no gifts, no cards. I went out for the night, but that's because my wife is hot and too young and so likes doing so. But really, it was just another day. Another year passing just means very little now. You can be 60 and in great shape with 40 years ahead of you, or you can be 30 and a mess and lucky you'll see 31. So really, why is one number better than another? So I don't celebrate birthdays, I celebrate achievements. I reward myself for stuff I'm proud of having done. Not dying in the last 12 months isn't really that exceptional. I should add, that doesn't mean I ignore that I'm no longer young. It just means it doesn't matter as long as I look after myself. It almost becomes cooler the older I get. And this is something that I point out to people in their 30s and their 40s who contact me and say they're out of shape, they feel like they've missed the boat. No, they've missed the young person boat, but the cool boat is coming, because being in shape when you're 25 is, so what, you should be. But at 50, that's cool. At 40, my assumption was my health and fitness would fall off a cliff. Now, I'm massively excited to see how long I can remain in okay condition. It's like having a vintage car or bike. Are there benefits of a brand new vehicle over something decades old? Of course there are. And to be fair, most old cars are pieces of junk. But is there something special about the thing that is old but still in great condition? I think so. Will this beat a brand new bike? In most ways, no. But my brand new bike just sits in the garage because it's boringly what it's expected to be. This sits here as an example of how something not necessarily bang up to date, but well looked after, can hold its own. And in 5, 10, 15 years' time, when the bike in the garage is now long sold because it just became not a very new bike, this would have just kept getting cooler, rarer, more impressive with the passage of time. It's an analogy. Even relics have a purpose.